All right, now a couple weeks ago we promised you that we would have the man to come in here and help us sharpen knives. Now here's what happened. I was at County Court Days in Mount Sterling. I was doing that part of it right before I went to Preston to get my chickens. And I saw this guy, actually he hollered at me and I said, hey, that's Ed, the guy that makes the knives, that makes fine knives. And he said, man, we got to do something on sharpening knives. And everybody in the world has their own method and their own way. And some people just walk around with really dull knives. If you got a knife that's 30 or 40 years old, old pocket knife, what are you talking about?
Those were all our carbon steel blades and stuff that basically were easier to sharpen, and you used your whetstones and your oil type stones, and they sharpened quicker and easier. They were softer steels. One of the big questions I have today, most people ask me is, you know, how do I go about sharpening my new knife I bought, which is in the stainless family, which is a total different sharpening. But what we got here today is we've got both systems set up here to where we can work on a carbon steel blade, and then we can move over to the newer type sharpeners that are designed more for the harder type stainless steels and the harder steels that we have. A lot of people still trying to think they can still use Grandpa's old stone, and basically the new knives today will probably eat Grandpa's stone in half before you get your edge on it.
Well, first thing let's establish the fact that no matter what you do, no matter where you go, if the segment is on making chili or shooting a bow and arrow, everybody says, well, that's not the way to do it. But you know what? Everybody has their own way. You do make knives. You have worked around this stuff your whole life, and here's what works for you.
Any stone system or any sharpening system, you're gonna have to go through stages. You can't just take one stone and do it all. So if your knife is the point to where it's dull, you're gonna have to start with your coarser stone, switch it over to the next stage, switch it over to the next stage. Now basically right here, this little knife is a carbon steel blade, and I'm gonna demonstrate how we sharpen our blades with the stones. This one's got a pretty good edge on it, so I really don't have to use the coarse. I'm gonna start with the medium. I've always pulled my edge away from me, and that's meaning that I'm standing my edge up. And you just pull across the stones, and you can feel this cut. And then you turn it over and you do the same thing on this edge, and you're holding an angle to where you're pulling this across this stone, an even stroke all the way across. If you looked under a microscope, what you're doing on this edge is you're bringing a burr, what they call a burr, up on this edge. When you bring that burr up on this edge, all you want to do is come over here on this little light stones, and you're just kind of taking that burr off of there because you've actually got your edge where you want it, and it's ready to cut the hair on your arm or the paper test or whatever you want to do.
Okay, let's talk about the difference between that old carbon knife and the stainless steel. Talk about the steel itself and how it's manufactured.
Well, when we get into the newer stainless type blades, you've got total different alloys in this steel here than you do this steel. There's steels in there to make this harder. There's steels in there to make this edge hold longer. And all that comes into play when you start sharpening, because they're in there for a reason, and it's gonna be a harder steel to sharpen. If we sit here with a stainless steel blade on this stone, we could probably sit here the rest of the day and we might not get that burr raised up on there like we want it. What I tried to explain to guys is, with this being a harder type steel, you want to go to the fixed type sharpeners like we have right here. This is a Lansky sharpener, and basically what it does, you can see how I've got this clamped in this jig. That way that blade's not moving. You're not sitting there like I am with that and just pulling that over it. On the back of these, you can see that you've got your angles, anywhere from a 17 to a 30-degree angle. So you basically pick out if you want a 17-degree angle on your stone, and you're basically working this over your edge, and everything's being held at a 17-degree angle.
Now, what's the difference between the angles?
It can be anywhere from 15 to 20, I think, on a normal, say, hunting size knife. That's another preference there that you just kind of have to play with and see where you want it.
Now, how much pressure do you apply when you do that?
You know, it's basically kind of a common sense type thing, because if you've got an edge that's really dull, you back up and get your coarser stone. The more pressure you put on it, the faster it's going to cut. And as far as putting pressure, as you drag that across there, you can feel that. And you're going to get that on that angle. And then you're going to turn it over and you're going to do the other side the same way. Put it back in the same hole, And you sit here and work with it. These type steels today, it just takes longer. And a lot of people think they're going to go take this stainless steel and put an edge on it as quick as the old blades, and it's just not going to happen. It requires more time and a little bit more patience. Once you do get your edge on there, your knife is right back where it was at when you bought it, and it's ready to go on for however long you want to use it. I try to tell people to keep a knife touched up. A lot of people's bad about when a guy comes to me and he says, well, I cleaned 8 deer with my knife and it's dull. Well, it shouldn't have went that long without touching it up a little bit, because if you just touched it up a little bit, even with your fine stone or your crock sticks or something, any of the little touching up stuff you do, that will maintain that edge that much longer to where you don't have to go to your aggressive type sharpeners.
So hit a lick on it every now and then.
Hit a lick on it every now and then. It don't hurt it.
What can you do that you have seen and heard people do that is absolutely wrong? The worst thing you want to do for your knife?
People go to their garage and they want to use these stones on these bench grinders. And it's way too coarse of a sharpening system. Them's for lawnmower blades, not knives. But your kitchen knives are the same way. All your kitchen knives and fillet knives are 99% stainless today. And but you can buy some nice little motorized and run them through it, or the little handheld diamond type sharpeners that you can just pull it through a few times and you can throw your edge back on them pretty quick.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad I went to county court days, because I got to see you again. And
I'm
we
glad
had
you
a great
dropped
idea, great idea for a segment here, and thank you so much for coming and sharing this with
I
us.
hope it helps some people.
I guarantee it will.